My wife mocked me for having no ambition. She never knew who I really was. I didn't raise my voice when my wife told me to move. I didn't react when she laughed, standing inches away from the man she was clearly sleeping with, and ordered me to make them drinks like I was invisible. What neither of them understood, what they couldn't possibly have known, was that the moment those words left her mouth, everything she believed about her life was already unraveling. A clock had started ticking. 3 minutes. That was all it took. But to understand how those 3 minutes destroyed her world, you need to understand something first. My wife had absolutely no idea who she was married to. My name is Ethan Reeves, 34 years old. For the last 6 years, I've been running a global cybersecurity consulting firm called Sentinel Protocol Solutions. We specialize in high-risk security audits, breach simulations, and infrastructure stress testing for organizations that cannot afford failure. I'm talking about Fortune 500 corporations, government agencies, international financial institutions. The kind of clients who don't advertise, who protects them, may and pay whatever it costs to make sure their systems never go down. We operate across 23 countries. Our contracts start around $200,000 and climb into the multi-million-dollar range depending on complexity and sensitivity. Last year alone, my personal earnings exceeded $18 million. This year, if everything stays on track, I'll cross 22. My wife, Gabrielle, knew none of this. Not a single dollar of it. As far as she was concerned, I was a mediocre freelance IT guy. A man who worked from home in sweatpants, earning maybe $60,000 a year fixing servers and troubleshooting software issues for small businesses that couldn't afford better help. She believed I was stuck, unambitious, boring, and barely contributing. I never corrected her. At first, the secrecy was intentional, but innocent. I'd watched too many friends build something successful, only to lose half of it in ugly divorces. The moment money entered the picture, businesses dismantled, accounts frozen. Years of work wiped out by legal warfare. I wanted stability before transparency. I wanted control. Then, 3 years into our marriage, things changed. It started subtly. Gabrielle would come home from yoga classes looking different. Her hair would be perfectly styled, like she'd just left a salon. Her makeup flawless, not the casual, barely there look she used to wear when she went to the gym. When I asked, she'd laugh it off. New instructor, she'd say. They have mirrors everywhere. Makes you self-conscious. Then her phone changed. For 4 years, she'd left it face up on the kitchen counter. Unlocked. No concern. Suddenly, there was a passcode. Face ID disabled when she was asleep. Notifications hidden. When I asked about that, she shrugged. Privacy, she said. Everyone deserves some. Then came the lingerie. Expensive pieces started showing up in the laundry. Silk, lace. Tags from boutiques I knew were overpriced. This stuff she never wore for me. When I mentioned it, she accused me of being paranoid. Women buy things for themselves, she snapped. Not everything is about you. The credit card statements were harder to ignore. Charges from hotels in our own city. Upscale places. Weekend stays. Spa packages. Restaurants I'd never been to with her. She always had an explanation. Client meetings. Girls' trips. Work stress. Until one night at a dinner party, I casually mentioned her Tuesday girls' night to her best friend Melissa. Melissa frowned. What girls' night? That was the moment guessing stopped. I hired a private investigator. His name was Vincent Torres. Former LAPD detective, 19 years on the force, calm, direct, and professional in a way that told you he'd seen every kind of betrayal imaginable and stopped being surprised a long time ago. I didn't ask him to spy. I asked him to confirm. 6 weeks later, he handed me a file that told me everything I already feared and more. Photographs with timestamps, hotel entry and exit records, receipts, cloud-synced text messages pulled from backups Gabrielle didn't even know existed. Her affair partner's name was Kieran Ashford, 38 years old, investment banker, divorced, drove a Tesla Model S, lived in a downtown penthouse that cost nearly $9,000 a month. They'd been sleeping together for 14 months. 14 months. 14 months of Gabrielle coming home, kissing my cheek, and asking why I hadn't done anything meaningful with my life. 14 months of her sighing dramatically about money while spending weekends at luxury resorts with another man. 14 months of her rolling her eyes when I worked late, calling me boring, telling friends she'd settled, and asking her mother why she'd married someone with no ambition. I sat with that information longer than most people would. I could have filed for divorce the same day Vincent handed me the file. Instead, I waited. Because as painful as the betrayal was, it clarified something important. Gabrielle didn't cheat because she fell in love. She cheated because she thought she was better than me. She believed she'd married down. She wanted status, validation, a man who impressed people the moment he walked into a room. So I let her believe I wasn't that man. When we first got married, I was earning a legitimate $180,000 a year doing IT consulting. Solid income, respectable, nothing extravagant. We bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet Phoenix suburb. The mortgage was affordable. The life was simple. 2 years into our marriage, I pivoted. A major financial institution hired me to stress test their entire network infrastructure. They wanted someone independent, someone discreet, someone ruthless about weaknesses. The contract paid $340,000 and was scheduled for 4 months. I finished it in 2. Instead of sitting idle, I spent the remaining time building relationships with their executives. Within a year, I had contracts with 6 more companies. Within 2, I incorporated Sentinel Protocol solutions and hired 23 specialists. By year 4, the company was clearing 8 figures annually. I never told Gabrielle. Our joint checking account stayed modest. $8,000 at most. Bills paid on time. No missed payments. No red flags. Meanwhile, I held over $4.7 million in investment accounts she didn't know existed. A cryptocurrency portfolio worth more than $1 million. Multiple properties generating nearly $50,000 a month in passive income. 18 months earlier, I'd paid off the mortgage on our house in full. Gabrielle still believed we owed $178,000. At first, hiding the money was about protection. After I discovered the affair, it became strategy. I documented everything. Every receipt, every message, every lie. I waited. Then came Tuesday afternoon in late September. I was upstairs in my office, what Gabrielle dismissively called the computer room, finishing a security audit for a pharmaceutical company. The contract was worth $680,000. I was 3 days ahead of schedule. At exactly 2:47 p.m., I heard the front door open. Laughter drifted through the house. A man's voice, smooth, amused, said something about loyalty being overrated. Then Gabrielle laughed. Moments later, her voice changed. Sharper, commanding. Ethan, get down here now. I saved my work, closed my laptop, and stood. I already knew, but what I didn't know was that she was about to make the worst mistake of her life. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I didn't rush. There was no anger in my steps, no hesitation either, just calm. From the landing, I could already see them in the living room. Gabrielle stood near the center of the space, dressed in a tight black dress I had never seen before. It hugged her like it had been bought for a specific audience, and I wasn't it. Her hair was professionally styled, smooth and glossy, and diamond earrings caught the afternoon sunlight pouring through our floor-to-ceiling windows. I knew immediately I hadn't bought them. Beside her stood a man who looked exactly like the private investigator's photos. Tall, confident, tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my first car. One arm rested casually around Gabrielle's lower back, his hand positioned with familiarity and ownership. Kieran Ashford. The man she'd been sleeping with for over a year. The man she'd brought into my house. There you are, Gabrielle said, her tone coated in irritation and something else, contempt. This is Kieran. She didn't wait for me to respond. We just closed a huge deal at his firm, she continued. We're celebrating. Make us drinks. Kieran looked at me for the first time and smirked. Scotch, he said. Neat. Something decent if you've got it. Gabrielle laughed, leaning into him. He mostly keeps the cheap stuff, she said, glancing at me. We're not exactly rolling in money, are we, honey? The way she said honey made my jaw tighten. I nodded slowly. Right, I said. Not rolling in money? She waved her hand impatiently. Move it, Ethan. Kieran doesn't have all day. Like you. Some people actually work. Kieran dropped onto the couch, the Italian leather sectional. I'd paid for in cash 6 months earlier, and stretched his arm along the back. Gabrielle sat far too close to him. His hand never left her back. Must be tough, he said casually, not even looking at me. Being the house husband? No offense, man, but I couldn't do it. None taken, I replied. Gabrielle rolled her eyes. Stop standing there. Go make the drinks. Make Kieran strong. He's earned it. I looked at them for a long moment. My wife. In my house. With her affair partner. Ordering me around like I was invisible. Give me 3 minutes, I said. Gabrielle scoffed. Finally, I turned and walked back upstairs. The door to my office closed softly behind me. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop not because I needed to, but because habits matter when you're about to do something irreversible. I checked the time. 3 minutes. I'd rehearsed this scenario more times than I could count. I'd hoped I'd never need it. But I was ready. I logged into the county property management portal. The deed appeared instantly. Owner, Ethan Reeves. Purchase date, August 14th, 2019. Mortgage status, paid in full. Payoff date, March 2nd, 2024. Gabrielle's name was nowhere. When we bought the house, I'd explained that keeping it solely in my name would simplify tax filings related to my business. She hadn't cared. Whatever you think is best, she'd said back then. I trust you. That trust hadn't aged well. I opened a document already saved on my desktop. An eviction notice. Prepared 3 weeks earlier, just in case. I updated the date, added Kieran Ashford's name as an unauthorized occupant, and submitted it through the county's electronic filing system. Processing would take 24 to 48 hours for formal service, but the system flagged the property immediately as eviction in progress. Anyone running a property check would see it. I opened our joint checking account. Balance, $8,247.83. I transferred $8,200 into my private business account, the one Gabrielle didn't know existed. I left $47.83 behind. Would she notice immediately? Maybe not, but she'd notice soon. Then I opened the home security app. Every door in the house was fitted with smart locks I'd installed 2 years earlier. Gabrielle had access to the app, but she never used it. She hated technology, preferred physical keys. I changed every code. Front door, back door, garage, side gate, 6-digit combinations. Randomized, secure. The physical keys in her purse became worthless in real time. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside were 47 pages. Prepared, printed, organized. Waiting. Property deed. Mortgage payoff confirmation. Screenshots of Sentinel Protocol Solutions. Quarterly revenue. My personal bank statements showing investment balances totaling over $4.7 million. A full private investigator's report, photos, receipts, timestamps, credit card statements highlighting $37,000 Gabrielle had spent on hotels, restaurants, and gifts for Kieran over 14 months. Text message logs, including one from the previous week. I can't wait to leave him. He's so pathetic. You're everything I actually deserve. I placed Vincent Torres' business card on top of the stack. I stood up. 3 minutes had done their job. When I walked back downstairs, Gabrielle and Kieran had moved even closer together. His arm was now fully around her shoulders. Her hand rested casually on his thigh. They were laughing at something on her phone. Probably me. About time, Gabrielle said without looking up. Where are the drinks? I have something better, I replied. Kieran glanced at me, amused. Oh, this should be good. I handed Gabrielle the envelope. She frowned. What's this? Open it. She sighed dramatically and pulled out the first page. Her expression shifted. Confusion first, then disbelief, then panic. Her eyes darted back and forth across the deed. She flipped the page. Then another. Then another. What is this? She whispered. Kieran leaned over her shoulder. What's wrong? She turned to the bank statements. Her hands started shaking. She swallowed. This says you made over $4 million this quarter. That's company revenue, I said calmly. My personal take was about 1.3 after expenses. The color drained completely from her face. Kieran grabbed the papers. His smirk vanished. Holy, he muttered. This is real. Keep reading, I said. The photos are interesting. Gabrielle flipped to the investigator's report. Photos of her and Kieran entering hotels, holding hands at restaurants, her hand in his back pocket. 14 months documented. She stood abruptly, papers scattering across the floor. You've been spying on me? She screamed. I've been documenting your affair, I corrected. There's a difference. Kieran dropped the envelope like it burned. Look, man, I didn't know. You knew she was married, I said. You just didn't know I was worth anything. I pulled out my phone. At the exact moment I tapped the screen, every lock in the house clicked. Gabrielle jumped. What was that? The smart locks, I said. Ah! I changed the codes. Her voice went shrill. You can't do that. This is my house. I smiled for the first time. Your house? I asked softly. Your name isn't on the deed. It never was. Kieran was already backing toward the door. This is between you two, he said. I'm out. Good choice, I replied. Oh, and Kieran. He froze. Page 27, I said. That's where Gabrielle talks about divorcing me once she takes half my assets. He looked at her. She lunged for my arm. Ethan, wait please. I pulled away. You have 30 seconds to leave before the security system alerts the police to trespassers. Her mouth opened. Trespassers. I checked my phone. 28 seconds. Kieran scrambled to the keypad. Locked. Code, he snapped. I raised my phone. Front door is 8-4-7-2-9-3. The lock clicked. He ran. Gabrielle followed, crying, clutching papers that proved exactly how badly she'd misjudged everything. I watched through the window as Kieran drove away, left her standing alone in my driveway. I closed the blinds, went back upstairs, and returned to work. I didn't watch her leave. Once the door closed and the locks re-engaged, I turned away from the window and walked back upstairs to my office. The pharmaceutical audit was still open on my screen, the cursor blinking patiently where I'd left it. Deadlines don't pause for personal drama. I sat down, adjusted my chair, and went back to work. That night, I slept better than I had in over a year. My phone started buzzing around 7:15 p.m. Blocked number. I ignored it. Then another call. Then another. By 9 o'clock, I had 17 missed calls and a voicemail inbox completely full. I listened to them while cooking dinner. The first few were Gabrielle. Her voice cracked and shaky. Ethan, please answer. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Can't just throw me out like that. Then anger replaced panic. This is illegal. You can't lock me out of my own home. My lawyer says I have rights. Then her mother. Furious. How dare you humiliate my daughter like this? She told me everything. You're a monster. Then Gabrielle again. Desperate now. I'm at a hotel. I don't have money for more than one night. Please. I made a mistake. Can we just talk? The final voicemail came just before midnight. Kieran. His voice was tight, controlled, scared. Look, man, Gabrielle won't stop calling me. She says you have photos and evidence, and she's going to lose everything. I don't want any part of this. Whatever happens with your divorce, leave me out of it. We're done. Her and me, we're done. I deleted every voicemail. Then I went to bed. At 8:04 a.m. the next morning, my attorney called. Divorce papers are filed, Rebecca Chen said briskly. Rebecca was 42, family law specialist with 16 years of experience and a reputation for absolutely dismantling unfaithful spouses in court. She didn't waste words. I cited adultery with extensive documentation attached, she continued. I've requested full financial disclosure from Gabrielle and submitted your records. Establishing separate property ownership. How long will it take? I asked. In Arizona, with this level of evidence, and no shared assets. 90 days if she fights it, less if she's smart. She paused. She won't be smart. I assumed as much. One more thing, Rebecca added. Your wife tried calling my office 14 times yesterday. We didn't return the calls. My paralegal logged each attempt for the record. Good. Off the record, she said, her tone softening just slightly. This is one of the cleanest cases I've ever handled. Most people don't document an affair this thoroughly before making a move. I had time, I replied. Clearly, she said. Also, Kieran Ashford's name appears in the filing as the affair partner. That's public record. I smiled. That could be uncomfortable for him. If his firm has morality clauses, Rebecca said dryly, it could be catastrophic. 2 days later, Gabrielle showed up at my house. Not my office, my house. She made it no farther than the driveway before the security cameras flagged her presence and sent me an alert. I pulled up the live feed on my laptop. She looked different. Her hair was unwashed, no makeup. The same black dress from Tuesday, now wrinkled. She stood at the front door, finger hovering over the doorbell like she wasn't sure pressing it was a good idea. She pressed it. I didn't answer. She pressed it again. Then she started knocking. Ethan, I know you're in there, she cried. Your car's in the garage. Please. We need to talk. I muted the sound and continued reviewing a security protocol for a healthcare network in Singapore. The contract was worth $1.1 million. Much more interesting. She stayed there for 47 minutes. Knocking. Ringing. Eventually sitting on the doorstep, crying. Then she left. That evening, I received an email from her attorney, Donald Price, mid-tier divorce lawyer, known for taking hopeless cases because he needed the billable hours. The email was professional, polite, desperate. Mr. Reeves, I represent Gabrielle Reeves in your divorce proceedings. My client is requesting temporary spousal support and immediate access to the marital home to retrieve personal belongings. Additionally, my client disputes your characterization of the residence as separate property and intends to file a motion for equitable distribution of assets acquired during the marriage. Please have your attorney contact me to arrange a reasonable settlement conference. I forwarded it to Rebecca. Her reply came in under 3 minutes. Lol, he's got nothing. Don't worry. Professional as always. 3 weeks later, I sat for my deposition. Rebecca's office was all glass, steel, and leather furniture that probably cost more than Gabrielle's annual salary at the marketing firm where she worked part-time. Donald Price looked exhausted. Gabrielle looked worse. She'd lost weight. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. She wouldn't look at me. The deposition was scheduled for a full day. It lasted 90 minutes. Donald started with what he thought was his strongest angle. Mr. Reeves, can you explain why you felt it necessary to hide your income from your wife? I didn't hide my income, I said calmly. I maintained separate business accounts, which is standard practice for LLC owners. My wife had full access to our joint household accounts. Rebecca slid documents across the table. Exhibit A. Joint account statements showing consistent deposits sufficient to cover all household expenses. Donald flipped pages. Exhibit B, Rebecca continued. Arizona statutes regarding separate versus community property. More pages. Exhibit C. Corporate records establishing Sentinel Protocol Solutions as a separately maintained business. Donald's frown deepened. My client claims you deliberately misled her about your financial situation. I never lied, I said. I never claimed to be struggling. My wife made assumptions. Rebecca leaned forward. Mr. Reeves paid all household expenses, owned the home outright, and never requested financial contribution from Mrs. Reeves. How he managed his business earnings is not her concern. Legally, Donald cleared his throat. Nevertheless, my client feels entitled. Feelings aren't grounds for asset distribution, Rebecca interrupted. This is an at-fault divorce with 14 months of documented adultery. Gabrielle finally spoke. Her voice was small. Ethan, please. I made a mistake. I know I did, but I have nothing now. Nowhere to go. Can't we work something out? I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had mocked me in my own living room. The woman who had planned to take half my assets while calling me pathetic. No, I said. She started crying. Donald tried once more. Mr. Reeves, setting aside legal issues, don't you feel any moral obligation? No, Rebecca said, standing. This deposition is over. Donald gathered his papers slowly. He knew. They both did. 6 weeks later, we stood before Judge Patricia Morrison. 62 years old, 28 years on the bench, zero tolerance for nonsense. The hearing took 23 minutes. Rebecca presented everything. Photos, bank statements, text messages, surveillance reports, the deed, the mortgage payoff. Donald argued that I'd committed financial infidelity. Judge Morrison laughed. Mr. Price, are you seriously arguing that maintaining separate business finances constitutes marital misconduct? My client was unaware. Your client was conducting a 14-month affair using marital funds while living rent-free, the judge replied. She scanned the documents. Divorce granted. All property remains with Mr. Reeves as separate property. Mrs. Reeves is awarded zero spousal support due to marital misconduct. The gavel fell. Outside the courtroom, Rebecca smiled. Congratulations, she said. You're free. The courtroom emptied quickly after the ruling. Chairs scraped against the floor. Lawyers gathered their files. People whispered to one another as they exited, already mentally moving on to the next case. Gabrielle didn't move. She sat frozen at the table, staring at a spot just below the judge's bench, like if she looked long enough, the decision might reverse itself. It didn't. Donald Price leaned toward her and murmured something I couldn't hear. She nodded numbly, still not looking up. When she finally stood, her movements were slow. Unsteady-like, her body hadn't caught up with the reality that her life had just collapsed. She still didn't look at me. Rebecca gathered her papers calmly, every motion efficient. She didn't celebrate. She never did. Winning was just part of the job. As we stepped into the hallway, I finally exhaled. Not relief. Closure. Rebecca stopped near the elevators. One more thing, she said casually. I requested the court seal the surveillance exhibits. I turned to her, surprised. We didn't discuss that. She smiled not warmly but knowingly. Kieran Ashford's firm has a morality clause in their partnership agreement, she said. If those photos and messages became searchable public record, his career would implode. This way he gets to live wondering if they'll ever surface. I nodded slowly. That's considerate. Rebecca shrugged. You didn't ask for revenge? You asked for resolution. This gives you both. She extended her hand. Congratulations, Ethan. You're officially done. We shook hands. I walked out of the courthouse alone. Life didn't dramatically change the next day. That's something people don't tell you. There was no cinematic sunrise. No overwhelming sense of victory. No urge to celebrate. I woke up, made coffee, checked emails, and kept going. What did change was the silence. No tension in the air. No passive-aggressive comments. No subtle contempt disguised as humor. No constant feeling that I was being evaluated and found lacking by the person who was supposed to be my partner. 2 weeks later, Gabrielle retrieved the last of her belongings. Rebecca arranged it so I wouldn't be home. Everything was boxed neatly and placed in the garage, just as I'd promised. Clothing, shoes, personal items. No furniture. No artwork. No shared assets. Because there were none. She left behind a few things intentionally. Old photos. A framed wedding picture. A mug that read Best Husband of Vera gift from our first anniversary. I threw them away. The first real sign that the fallout had spread beyond us came a month later. A colleague forwarded me an industry newsletter. Buried halfway down was a quiet announcement. Kieran Ashford has resigned from his position effective immediately. No explanation. No press release. Just absence. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt confirmation. Actions have consequences even when you don't expect them to. People sometimes ask if I regret hiding my wealth. The answer is simple. No. Because money doesn't change people, it reveals them. If Gabrielle had believed I was successful, she would have stayed. Not because she loved me, but because I benefited her image. That realization hurt far more than the affair ever did. but it also freed me. 3 months after the divorce finalized, I sold the house. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted a clean slate. I moved into a modern place downtown with floor-tisseling windows and an office that overlooked the city. Sentinel Protocol Solutions expanded into 2 new markets that year, hired 12 more specialists. My income grew. My life simplified. I started traveling again, not for work, but for myself. I slept better, thought clearer, lived lighter. Once, months later, I ran into Melissa Gabrielle's former best friend at a coffee shop. She hesitated when she saw me, then approached. "I just wanted to say," she began awkwardly, "I didn't know about any of it." She told everyone a very different story. I smiled politely. "They usually do." "She's not doing well," Melissa added quietly. "She keeps saying she ruined everything." I nodded. "That part's accurate." I never spoke to Gabrielle again. Not once. No texts. No emails. No accidental run-ins. The past stayed exactly where it belonged. Behind me. People like to imagine revenge is loud, explosive, public. But real consequences are quiet. They unfold slowly. They don't need an audience. All they require is truth and time. Looking back, the most ironic part isn't that she underestimated me. It's that she never bothered to know me at all. She lived with me, shared a bed with me, mocked me, yet had no idea who I was. And by the time she found out, it was already too late.